Hello everybody and welcome to Guild Wars 2 Daily. Today the footage in the background comes in from, I think, Guild Wars 2 Guru and Curse. I've seen a few shorter videos, like 4 minutes, so there will probably be a couple of clips mashed in there together. Yesterday, or a couple of days ago, I was talking about the Wizard's Tower. One of the videos should probably have footage from that today, so hopefully you enjoy that. And yeah, today we're going to be talking about mechanics and so forth, so let's get stuck in. The first question was sent from Taparock808, who asked, "This will likely not affect you or the majority of players, but it does affect me and I'm sure a number of people as well. I'm a student who moved around a lot. I'm from Thailand myself, but I was studying in the EU for a few years and now I'm studying in the US. And along with that, I do tend to travel to places and I do go back home at least once a year. One of the big reasons I played Guild Wars 1 was because I can play it from anywhere I want and I can access any servers. However, it's recently been brought to light on Guild Wars 2 Guru that in Guild Wars 2, you will still be able to access all the servers once I logged in, but depending on where you bought the game, you'll be region locked to log in only from that region. What do you think? Obviously, this aspect of region locking is implemented in many MMOs today, but why should Guild Wars 2 adopt it when Guild Wars 1 did so well without? This to me seems contradictory to the goals that they have." So, a bit of a mouthful there really, but this is something that's come out. This I'm going to try and not talk about too much because I feel like this has just kind of come up. It's one of those topics that everyone can start raging about and jumping the gun. It's definitely not as bad as you might initially think. So this is essentially the situation, right? We've found out that the game will have some form of region locking. It's not like in some MMOs, a lot of MMOs in fact, which basically say that if you're playing on Asian servers, you can then never interact with people or change servers to, say, North American. A lot of games do that, and they have specific versions of the client that are dedicated to different areas of the world, and in a lot of situations as well, those different clients will be very different at what state of the game it's actually been updated to. You might find that if it's a Korean MMO, the Korean client and all the people playing over there have got far more content than people in any of the other regions, and a lot of games do lock players out like this. I'm in Europe, so if you're watching this and you're from America and you wanted to play with me, then, well, it would be tough luck. You wouldn't be able to do it, and that's kind of the situation that happens with a lot of MMOs. Guild Wars 1 was really free and easy about this. You could change to any different server you wanted. For a long time early in the game's lifespan, this wasn't actually the case. It was a situation where I believe you had 5 chances to change the server that you were existing in before the game locked you out. So you could go to the American servers if you wanted and then swap back a couple of times. But after 5, that was it. Your luck was up. After a while, this was then changed, and everyone could just go wherever the hell they wanted. Some servers were closed down as time went on, but there's still a hell of a lot of servers up, even though, like the Asian ones, for example, have got barely anyone playing them at all, and yet they're still up, and you can move around freely. So a lot of us were kind of assuming that Guild Wars 2 was going to do the same thing. I remember it must have been about 2 years ago now. There was an interview that suggested maybe Guild Wars 2 was going to have region locking, and everyone got a little bit tentative about it, and we were like, oh, none of us would really like that, and it kind of just fizzled out, and nobody thought anything of it. And now this has happened. Guild Wars 2, though, doesn't have region locking like what I was just describing. It's not locking you out and saying that because I'm in Europe, I can never play in America. That same system that was there in Guild Wars 1 that lets you freely, as many times as you want, swap what server you're in and play with people from anywhere in the world, is still there. But they've said that if I buy a copy of the game here in England, then I cannot play Guild Wars 2 if I were then to go to America. I'd have to buy another copy when I'm in America. So I can still play in England and play with other people who are in America, but if I physically in the real world move location, I'll need another copy of the game. Which is very similar to what a lot of games used to do. You know, DVDs still do this. We have regions of DVDs. If you're in the wrong region, you can't play it on your system. It's the same situation here. And to an extent, it does still happen with games. So they're doing that with Guild Wars 2. But for most of us, it's not going to be a problem. I mean, me personally, I'd say a good chunk of everyone who's going to be playing Guild Wars 2 has no immediate plans to change continents. And then they're now concerned that they'll have to buy that game a few times. But as this person writes in, there are some people who travel a lot, and this is going to be a pain for you. However, ArenaNet have addressed the concerns a lot of you guys who travel a lot have got. They said on the forums recently, there has been a post that they are looking into some kind of solution for players who travel a lot. So hopefully that will rest any worries you might have. But just don't. I did want to address this today anyway because it's very easy, I think, for people to hear, oh, Guild Wars 2's got region locking, and then freak out and think that it's something way worse than it is. It is a bit annoying. It's obviously, in my opinion, them saying, oh, well, look, you've got inflated prices if you live in Australia, for example. They have to pay so much for the game. But obviously this is a situation there where people are saying, right, well, you have to buy it in that region. They're not going to let you pay for an overseas copy and then use it in your country. You have to spend the amount of money that they have priced it for in your region, which sucks. But I guess they're a business, and NCSoft have got to recoup their money some way. So it's annoying, but it's not as bad as you might have initially expected. Our first quick question comes in from Calistone Plays, who says, will RPers have our own Guild Wars 2 server, or will we just have to RP besides others in a normal server? I'm answering this question because I had a good 3 or 4 questions lately of people asking about RPing. As a player, I've never really RP'd in games at all. It's something that interests me. I know enough about the Guild Wars universe that maybe one day in-game I will be doing it, but personally it's not something I've really done a lot, so I probably am limited in what I can talk about here. But I do appreciate that RPers probably do want their own server. However, ArenaNet don't seem to think that's so important. This was asked a long time ago, and the answer is no, you don't get your own RP server, which sucks. But I think ArenaNet's reason back then was that they weren't sure there'd be enough people wanting to roleplay to constitute having their own server, that it was a little bit more complicated than that, because obviously for every region, then there's going to have to be specific servers set up in those regions, and they wouldn't want to have only an RP server, but it only exists in North America, because then people in other areas are going to start complaining that they get high latency and they want their own. So I think they just kind of said it was a bit of a big headache for them and that they weren't really that interested in it at the moment. But they didn't rule it out. They didn't say, oh, this will never happen. And if anything, I think really they considered that if they didn't provide an RP server, they expected the community to sort of provide their own one, if you will. Like, after a little while, say a month after the game's been out, there will probably be a few servers out there, a few worlds, if you will, that people will have kind of, the community itself will have said, right, most people around here are going to be RPing. As I say, I myself have never really RP'd, so I don't know how important it is for you to have an environment where you can RP on your own. I can imagine why, though, because it's going to really suck to be in character with a load of people and then some arsehole comes over and just starts taking the piss. I can imagine that would be annoying. That would be annoying. So ideally, you don't want to do it in a server that's not specifically designated as it, and I do think ArenaNet could provide that functionality. They might after the game's release, but hopefully, fingers crossed, it will be alright for you until that time comes. I know it's not ideal, but I'm going to have to be the bringer of bad news on this one. The next question was asked by Ridslayer, who says, do you think that there are going to be any major events in cities? For example, of the dragons starting a raid in a city. This is something I really like the idea of, but it doesn't look like anything that they're doing. Dynamic events so far have seemed to be very much an explorable area kind of thing. At the end of the betas so far, the press betas at the very least, we've seen that there have been big kind of events happening in the cities, but they're not like traditional dynamic events. They're more that the developers wanted to end the beta with a bang, so they just spawn a load of giants into Divinity's Reach or something. So that's kind of an event that's been happening in the cities, but aside from that, we haven't really seen very much going on. You can see, I mean, yesterday I did a video of somebody giving a tour of one of these cities, and you can see that they're huge, but they do also seem quite barren of things to do, where there's no traditional quests. You know, let's look at Divinity's Reach. We've got loads of huge districts there of people living in them, but it's quite barren. There's not really much content there because there's no traditional quests, and neither are there any events. I think ArenaNet are reluctant to do events, particularly combat events, because obviously these cities are going to be hubs for lots of players, and they're going to be all of different levels. So how do they balance that? Do they have enemies that are all at level 80 and the event only is fun if you're also level 80, or do they have them all low level, in which case when you're a high level character it means nothing? So it does seem like it would be a bit of a headache for them to put events there. I really want events there though, and I love this idea that you put forward as well, that maybe a dragon will attack the city. I've always been a big fan of the idea. This dynamic event system can be so much more than lots of frequently recurring events. And by frequently, I mean, let's look at a week space. You're going to have seen that event appear a lot. So look at the Shatterer. I still consider that to be a frequently occurring event. I like the idea, and the dynamic event system does certainly cater towards this, that there could be an event that occurs only once in an entire month of the real world. There will be a certain event where some really powerful dragon champion comes and attacks, say, Lion's Arch or something. That's really exciting, and I love that idea, but we haven't seen or heard anything of it so far. I think though that when ArenaNet announced that when the game was going to be released, the development team was going to be split in two. Half were going to work on expansions and the other half were going to work on streaming content updates. I think the idea might be that those guys consistently working on the game will add more unique one-off events that occur in the world, which should be really cool. So as the game goes forward, we'll have festivals like we had in Guild Wars 1. So say Christmas, they'll probably decorate an area to look snowy, but in addition to these festivals that will happen at Christmas, at Halloween and so forth, we'll probably also have events going in every now and then, and if they don't happen in the cities, I'd be surprised, because that would be a really cool thing for them to do. I'm hoping for city events. It looks like there will be city events, but it's another thing that's going on this ever-growing pile of features that seem to be added after release, and I always feel like developers have to be a bit careful when they keep coming back to that and saying, oh, observer mode, it will be there. Oh, that's another question, by the way. Actually, I hadn't planned to say that. Lots of people have been asking about observer mode. It's not there until after release. It's another one of those features. Guild halls, after release. Player housing, after release. The pile is growing. The list is getting longer and longer. I'm a little bit worried about that, but there you have it. Hopefully after release. The last question was asked by Xmaster X96, who said, I have a question about the characters you can make that start at level 80 with everything unlocked. These ones will also be able to go freely in World vs. World area, making it unfair because they'll have everything unlocked, ? Or they will only be able to go into the PvP conquest mode, or where will these ones be able to go? I guess this is a little bit of a quick question here, but really you've misunderstood how this is going to work in the game. In Guild Wars 1, and this is why I'm assuming you've misunderstood it, in Guild Wars 1 you had a specific PvP like region that you could go to, and you could create a character that would start immediately at max level and with access to a whole lot of skills depending on how many you'd unlocked through PvE gameplay and so forth, and how much PvP you'd done. So Guild Wars 1 had a facility that let all players be max level straight away, have access to a lot of stuff, and be able to play on a competitive level in the PvP areas, right? And that's kind of how Guild Wars 1 handled that. With Guild Wars 2, they're taking the same philosophy forward, in that for competitive PvP, players shouldn't have to grind, they should just have access to all the stuff that they want straight away. But that doesn't mean you can automatically create a character at the level cap straight away, as you could in Guild Wars 1. The way it works now is you'll have your normal PvE character, it's just that when you take it into the mists, into the competitive PvP areas, then that will be bumped up to max level, and it will be put in an environment where it can test its skills out, and it has access to everything. So it will still be your PvE character, and as soon as it leaves that zone, it will level back down to what's appropriate for it. And for World vs. World, things are quite interesting. I actually already had a version of this video uploaded. I put it up, but I'd actually made a mistake. So what happens with World vs. World, I was under the impression that you would just sort of stay at your current level and power threshold, and as you played through World vs. World, you'd get stronger and stronger and stronger until eventually you reach level 80. Like, a big part of World vs. World is a part of being able to do that. You can play your entire time in Guild Wars 2 in just that one game type. But it's not exactly as simple as that. There is still progression, and you will level up from, say, level 1 to level 80 in World vs. World. However, at all times you are sidekicked up to a specific power level that's appropriate for level 80 gameplay. And what this means is that a level 1 player can, on some level, compete against level 80 people that they find out in the World vs. World area. It'll be really hard for them to actually defeat someone who's level 80 because they'll have a lot more over them, but it can be done. You are of reasonable statistical power. But having said that, there is still progression to be made in World vs. World. Your things like your traits, extra skills, all that kind of stuff that you would get if you were playing through a normal PvE experience can all be gained in World vs. World, and they've set it up that way. ArenaNet are specifically making it so that you can go from level 1 to level 80, and they're making sure there's no like mechanics that are only available out in the PvE world, so that you can do this whole thing. So there is still progression, you do still level up, and there is a benefit to leveling up in World vs. World, but at the same time everyone's kind of sidekicked up to a reasonable place where they can fight in most situations. A big part of World vs. World, though, is obviously that it is an imbalanced form of PvP, and they're not trying to hide away from that. So there will still be imbalanced situations, and there will still be positions where a level 5 person probably won't win on their own against a level 80, but it's not going to be so bad that if you're in a big group, everyone's pissed off that you're there because they see you as more of a liability, because you are going to have some kind of power to your name regardless of your level anyway. See, the thing is though, there's been a lot of talk lately. A couple of interviews came out where they were saying that sidekicking up doesn't exist in the game anymore. I don't know whether that was in reference to just the PvE environment or whether they were talking about World vs. World. Because for a while now, I was under the impression sidekicking up was only really prevalent in World vs. World anyway. Does that mean that we're not going to be scaled up to level 80 at this point? I'm not 100% sure. But this is how the systems have been working as we've known them from the beta, at the very least. You have a single PvE character, and as you take it to these different game types, it will be scaled accordingly. But there we go, guys. That's another Guild Wars 2 daily. I feel like where we've done this one episode every day so far, this intro and outro I'm doing it, I'm slowly getting more and more tired of my own voice as the days go on. In any case, thank you very much for watching, guys. Thanks very much to Guild Wars 2 Guru and Curse for the footage that was in the background. Leave any questions you may have in the comments section below, and I'll see you tomorrow.